If you guys think that this held phone format is too crappy, please let me know and I'll get my big fancy camera again. But the phone's handy when I just have a random thought, and today's random thought, well, this hour's random thought, is we have all fallen for Windows Stockholm Syndrome. Now, controversial take up front. Windows, in general, is a very good operating system. I know, I just said the most unholy thing, but it is true. Windows is not some sort of amazing, everything is right sort of thing, and it never has been. But it is impossible to argue against, up until Windows 11 at least, the legendary compatibility of Windows. You could run stuff that you literally got in the late 90s, in general, on top of brand new Windows 10 64-bit. Not all of it, but a lot of it. You could run QuickBooks 2000, I think, it would even work on Windows 10. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was before they added all the weird database engines and stuff. The compatibility alone is absolutely off the charts legendary. It has led to some modernization issues, but for the most part, Windows has been generally, ever since Windows 2000 and XP came out, it has been very reliable. Up until Windows 8, it was very consistent, and even with 8, it still at least was consistent within the bizarro 8/8.1 setup, until we moved to 10, where we had the schizophrenic settings panels in full effect, and we would lose control panels while gaining settings panels that were missing half of the control panel items. Anyway, the bottom line on that, and there's bugs everywhere, is Windows is overall a good operating system. It has a generally consistent user interface up until, the settings panel nonsense and modern apps. And the compatibility is legendary, and the performance is acceptable across the board. Linux can beat it, especially if you compile your own kernel, so it's no panacea. But the reason Windows has always been my primary operating system is it is, generally speaking, a good operating system. UTF-16, bad choice now, but when they made the choice in the early 90s and Unicode didn't even exist, they had no idea that UTF-8 would be the dominant way to do things. And they made a very bold, forward-looking choice that has not served them too poorly. There are some designs in Windows that are actually superior to the way that Linux and other Unix-like systems do things. But anyway, this is not a video to praise Windows. This is basically a video to shoot down Windows, but I have to be honest, I would not feel right if I didn't load it up with all of that praise first, because I want to make it clear Windows is not some kind of terrible operating system overall until you get to Windows 11. Then it's just a disaster. But in general, what we have experienced is a form of Stockholm Syndrome, where, you're basically captured by someone and then you fall in love with your captor to cope. That's what's going on with Windows 10. I'm seeing comments regarding Windows 11 where people are like, oh yes, Windows 10 has been so great and Windows 11 is not. Wrong answer, man. Windows 11 is not. Oh my God, that bug is not going away. Sorry, this is fly harassing me. Windows 11 has not been some kind of amazing thing at all. No, Windows 11 has been dog crap. But Windows 10 is also dog crap. Let's not pretend like Windows 10 is great just because Windows 11 looks so much worse. Let's not pretend like Windows 8 and 8.1 were great either. Windows 2000, XP, and 7 were the only good NT versions. Before 2000, NT was a mess. You don't even want to know. They didn't have Device Manager at all. So loading drivers for things and just getting NT4 stable was like a legendary art. Don't even get me started on things pre-NT4. Everything prior to Windows 2000 in the NT world is legendary for it was absolutely awful to get stable, but once you got it stable, it was rock solid. The problem is, once you got it stable, 2000 changed all that. XP brought 2000 to the consumer line of Windows, effectively killing off the 16-bit piled on top of DOS compatibility layer version of Windows that would blue screen all the time. Then Vista changed the security model. They added a bunch of good ideas that turned out to not be good ideas. They were kind of half-baked, and they ruined everything. They just basically broke all their toys. And Vista was a disaster. Now, granted, if you got it, clean install, and you turned off System Restore, and you kept everything really trim, turned off Superfetch, Ready Boost, there were ways to make Vista performant. But there were unfixable bugs at the start that later updates did actually fix. There were severe desktop window manager bugs that were only fixed after Windows 7 came out. So Vista was a disaster, an objective disaster. And if you go and try to use it now, the Vista service packs and updates will make you think it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. Windows 7 fixed Vista. 7 is what Vista should have been. Unfortunately, 7 was also the last good version of Windows. Because it brought you the Vista security model, it brought you Aero Glass, you had a pretty interface if you had the video card to handle it, but you could turn it off. You could turn it off to have a highly performant GDI-based interface. 7 was the last Windows where you realistically had true choice over things. You didn't have a schizophrenic settings versus new settings panel. You didn't have this touch-centric nonsense. They still made everything for the user of a real computer, and there was consistency across the board with Windows stuff, at least in general, that you didn't necessarily see in other programs. But now, consistency's like, throw that out the window. I mean, there's stuff in Windows 10 and 11 where you can bounce between one thing and another, and they look completely different. The controls look different. The entire design paradigm is different. Look at old control panel versus new settings panel. Hell, go between settings panels, and there's not even consistency at this point. But the point of this video is not to rip on Windows 11. I've done that so much, and you can look through so many playlists of me doing that. The point of this video is that people are saying Windows 10 is good, and has been good, and has always been good. There's this sort of rewriting of history to say that Windows 10 was a good operating system. Windows 10 has never, ever, not once, in the entirety of history been a good operating system. In fact, Windows 10 was the first operating system, if I recall correctly, where they forced the desktop window manager to be the compositor and renderer for everything. So even if you were able to somehow turn off their fancy pants interface paint nonsense, you still would not get the benefit of GDI-based 2D drawing. You still would not get accelerated 2D. Because everything is forced to go through a 3D compositor. And if you don't have the ability to do that, it goes through a software 3D compositor, which is stupid slow. So, yeah, there's always at least one frame of delay between what the computer's doing and what actually shows up on your screen. It's a disaster. And I'm really upset that I see people saying 10 is good all over the place. Like, yeah, compared to 11, it's fantastic. But I've hated 10 ever since it came out in 2015. I've always hated 10. I've never liked any Windows since Windows 8 came out, really. And Windows 7 even, to some extent, there are things about it that piss me off. But Windows 7 largely stuck to the same general paradigms that XP did. But it brought nice things like the window, the window snap multitasking. And I'm not going to say that the additions to that multitasking functionality in 8 and 10, and especially the Windows X menu that they added in Windows 8, that was pure stroke of genius. Someone like me can finally get to admin stuff in 2 keystrokes. It's beautiful. But just because they added a few good elements doesn't mean that it isn't a complete and total piece of crap. And I'm tired of pretending like the gaslighting over the years and then showing us, well, here's a turd. Well, here's an even worse turd. Oh, well, I liked the better turd. It's still a turd, guys. Come the hell on. Please stop saying Windows 10 is good. It's not good. It's just less bad than 11. Be honest with yourselves. Look, a lot of you watching this video may not have even been around to see older versions of Windows. I don't know. I mean, you know, I was born in the early 80s, early to mid 80s, and kind of, I just, it's, my mind is blown thinking about the fact that there are people who are technically adults now, who were born in 2008. It kind of hurts to think about. That would mean that when people who are 18 or turning 18 now, when they were born, Windows 7 came out. Like, they wouldn't have even been old enough to know. There's an entire generation of children who are just now starting to turn adults that have never known a Windows before, probably Windows 8, because when you're 3 and below, you don't really remember any of that stuff. So Windows 8 or 8.1 would have been their first introduction to computers, and then tablets were competing with them. Tablets, touchscreens are the worst user interface. All mobile operating systems are crap. I don't even want to get into that right now. That's not the point of this video. The point is everything now is crap, and we're pretending like it's not. But the problem is now there's whole generations who've never known anything but crap. And, okay, do this. I don't remember exactly which ones it was or whatever, but I think the Fine Brothers React series did a video or series of videos where they put teens in front of old Windows 98 or 2000 or XP machines and have them use them, like really, really old computers. There might even be some where they're in front of like Commodore 64s and they have to follow directions. And the funny thing about it is, sitting in front of these old CRT beige, you know, office machines playing old school video games on Windows 95 and 98, these teens were actually like, this is actually really cool. I really like this. It's easy to use and it's fast. And I'm just, when I watched that, I was like, oh my God, really? You don't understand. And that's why I did a video once that I titled What They Stole From You, where all I do is boot up a VIA C7 or something, some old VIA board. And the whole point of that was not to be like, oh, I'm nostalgic for the past. The point is to be like, this computer was a slow, low power, embedded, not really meant to be anything other than an absolute basic computer, primarily for like industrial control, you know, low demand system. And it boots faster than your brand new laptop. Hello? Why is it that software has never gotten better? Why is it that everything is crap? And this is why I make all these videos talking about how I want to make a new programming language. I want to make a new operating system, because to be completely frank, people, we are 2 decades overdue for this crap. Everything now is basically 4 or 5 decades of compatibility layers with C from the 1970s and just the evolution from that. And it's time to stop. Windows 10 sucks. Windows 11 sucks more. Windows 8 sucked. Windows 8.1 sucked. Windows Vista sucked. That's it. Go back, look at them, and be honest. Okay, the hardware was a lot slower. Okay, everything had hard drives back then. Do you know what happens if you put an SSD in an old Windows XP machine today, and you make sure that you manually tweak the alignment of the install so that the partition starts on sector 64 instead of 63, thus just not writing 2 sectors to write 1 sector? It's a little scary. It's a little scary how fast Windows XP is just by adding an SSD. If you saw it, bricks would be shat. And that's all I'm going to say. Thanks for listening. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go bake in the North Carolina heat, but unlike the Europores, I have air conditioning, so suck it. Have a good one.